Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Well, this is exciting. This is one of my freshest interviews of the new year of 2026. And I am so thrilled. My heart is just so grateful and so happy to have on, not for the first time, but for the second time. Not only is she now an acclaimed writer, but she's a lovely dear friend. And I'm so happy to have my friend Laura Buchwald on the show yet again. And this time it's with the second book in her trilogy, the Ghost Table trilogy. It's called The Book of Reservations. And I am absolutely loving it. Laura, so good to see you.
So good to see you. Thank you so much for having me back.
Oh, Laura from New York. She was my friend in New York and someone I admired.
I'm still your
and
friend
loved.
in New York.
Oh, and she's still my friend in New York. You just make me miss you and miss New York too, but that's all right. Thank goodness for Zoom. And oh my gosh. So I told this probably in the last interview that I did with you, but the last time I saw you before I left New York City and came to Northern Indiana, you and I were having lunch at Le Pain Quotidien in New York City. And we were talking about, like, I know you're going to write a book. When are you writing this book? And you said, I'm really working on it. In fact, I think I've got it. I said, my goodness, because we had been talking about that for a couple of years. And then you actually said, no, I really have written something and I really have a publisher. So it became a reality. And I couldn't have been happier because I actually found you on social media and I don't know
That's
how.
Right.
Yes, I found you on social media and you wrote something and I was so moved by what you wrote. I said something and I was gobsmacked when you actually wrote me back on Facebook. And that I don't know how many years ago that was now, but that's how we met.
That is how we met. I wish we could remember what it was that I'd written. That was great. That was probably, could it have been 10 years ago or less than that?
Maybe it was 10 years ago because I've been here almost 6 now, which seems almost unfathomable.
Wow. So yeah.
Yeah. So it could have been, I just know that, well, first of all, I became very used to everything you posted was beautifully written. So I was like, wow, there's something about the way you speak when you write. And it captured me completely. And so then and we had talked often about you writing a book and how you've been wanting to, but that you just couldn't figure out what that would be. And that was years ago. But when I saw you right before I moved, you had written the first book. And so The Coat Check Girl was a surprise to me because I wasn't thinking you were going to do this juicy, lovely, delicious novel, basically, that would just capture me. And as it's done for now, many, many people, and has gotten a lot of wonderful writing about how people are loving your books. And yet it's your first book. How do you do that? How do you make the first book out of the gate something that people take notice? You get a real publisher. It gets out there. It gets on the lists. How do you do it?
Well, I suppose I can in part thank the fact that I procrastinated a lot. So I actually started that book back in 2007 and then put it aside for years. So it had a long period of marinating. I wrote some of it back then, put it aside, would pick it up here and there, put it aside. So it really, it was not a quick process and it really evolved over those years. I finally picked it back up again in earnest about a decade after I had started it. And, by then I was wiser. I had written more. And somehow these characters had stayed with me. So I had a pretty strong foundation of, the world of my story already. A world that I've, now been able to revisit again and again with the second and third books in the trilogy. But I had wonderful writing mentors and coaches along the way, writing groups, which are invaluable. And, so I had a lot of people to thank. If you look at the acknowledgments in that book, it's like practically a novella of the people that I had to thank for helping me along the way with that and supporting me.
Yeah. Well, it was greatly received. And so for people just to get an idea into the Ghost Table trilogy, which I love this aspect of your book. So it's set in New York City, I think in the West Village. And it's all based around, which is my favorite neighborhood in New York City. So now all of a sudden I'm reading your books and you're taking me there. And I relish that. And it also takes place in a restaurant. And I worked in the restaurant business in New York for 5 or 6 years. And so I get that world. But your characters are just so lovely. They're so real. And the dialogue between all of them, it's like a movie. I could so see all your books as a movie, and we'll get to that in a little bit because I have a feeling something might be cooking. I don't know. But the Kochek girl, so you've got these beautiful characters that have met each other, young people in this restaurant, but there's a back theme to your books, which are interesting to me because you and I have shared experience and shared fascination with and deep, I would say, appreciation for the spirit world and for communicating, with people who understand, prophecy and can talk to the other side and things like that. You and I both had that in common as well, but you have weaved that into your books. And let me tell you, you put that with a little bit of the paranormal and, I couldn't put it down.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that was one of the earliest things that you and I bonded about was our shared appreciation for spiritual connection. It was really fun and interesting and cathartic to be able to explore that in my writing. My protagonist has abilities far greater than mine to communicate with the other side. And, I'm sure I told you this last time around, this was inspired by an actual restaurant where I always felt this otherworldly presence. So I just sort of drew from that, and it's been interesting. And I also realized, in talking to people about my books, it's a very polarizing topic. People either are really into the idea of spiritual world and spirit connection, or they're completely put off by it or just not interested in it. It's been interesting. More people than not, though, have expressed interest and have told me their own stories and their own experiences, either with mediums or with, haunted houses that they grew up in, or, so many of the people that I've met along the way have these fascinating stories to tell me, and I never tire of hearing from them.
No, it's fascinating. And I think what it does is it gives permission to a lot of people who have had experiences, or when they get these like knowingness of maybe a loved one, who's crossed over, who's like, suddenly you feel their presence or something with you within your day. And it gives people permission to be able to relate to it and then come out of the closet, if you will, with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted these books also to be comforting to people who have lost loved ones, that there is this idea of spirit being eternal and love being eternal. But yeah, the number of people who, there are a lot of signs throughout my books. The characters get signs, and all of the details come from either things I've experienced or things that have been told to me over the years. So, I've had a lot of people open up about their own, visitations in dreams, or songs playing with uncanny timing, or a friend of mine who is fairly skeptical, interested but skeptical, was in her bedroom and got an instantaneous strong draft of her mother's perfume, her mother who passed some years ago, and couldn't explain it any other way. So I love seeing people who are skeptical start to kind of, little cracks in that veneer, and people starting to think, well, maybe there is more to all of this than what we actually see with or experience with our five senses.
Yes, but you weave it, as I said, so beautifully into your characters that I think are just super real. Your protagonists, Josie and Derek, and then all these other characters that surround them in their restaurant, which is based thematically. The food at the restaurant is from New Orleans, and so you've got that going on. And I know you personally love New Orleans, and
yes.
And New Orleans is also known for its, sort of ghostly features, if not, right? So you've had this really beautiful. It's realistic. It's not so woo woo in your book.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not. It's much more. It's actually, like you said, comforting and very beautiful the way you've done it, and the way you dialogue between your characters and then your characters with the characters who are on the other side who are coming through. You have done it impeccably, I think. It's so easy to understand what's going on when Josie starts to maybe hear the voice of somebody who's at the restaurant, and she has this ghost table. Tell us what a ghost table is and why you have called this the Ghost Table Trilogy.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying that, because another big goal of mine was that I wanted these to be grounded. I didn't want these to be woo-woo ghost stories. I wanted it to be stories that happen to have ghosts in them. So the Ghost Table was inspired by a restaurant in New Orleans called Muriel's on Jackson Square in the French Quarter that has a resident ghost, like a lot of places in New Orleans. And they set a table for him every night. His name is Antoine. There's a table set every night for Antoine and a guest with a glass of wine and a glass of water and their bread plates. And it's just this really beautiful and unique way to honor their resident spirit. And so what Josie has done in the second book is, well, she conceives of the ghost table in the first book, and by the second book, it is firmly implemented in the restaurant. She has a table for 6 on a landing, kind of out of the way in the restaurant, that is set every night for 6 resident spirits who are either attached to the building itself, which is an old building and had been a series of restaurants over the years, or to Josie and Derek, my 2 protagonists. So there are these 6 departed souls who are welcome at the restaurant whenever they want. And where Josie is not even just a believer, she's a knower that there is a spirit world. Her partner is very pragmatic and rational and doesn't really subscribe to it, but allows her to have this table in the restaurant, even if he wants nothing to do with it and doesn't understand why she spends so much time there. But for her, it's this really special kind of sanctuary, place where she can go and meditate on, to either actually be with the spirits of her departed loved ones or to just meditate on them and spend some more figurative time with them.
Yes. And you have done, I think, also in an amazing way with the characters. So with Josie and Derek, and you explained them, she's the ephemeral lover of her grandmother in spirit and all other departed spirits. And just once she's an open heart who wants to help everybody. And her partner, Derek, is, like you said, super pragmatic and everything. What you have done brilliantly in these books, both the first one and the second one, which is the Book of Reservations, which is the second one now that it just came out in December. You have really done a great service to people in showing the interplay in their relationship and how they deal with this particular thing and just relationships in general. The dialogue is so real. And I'm going to myself the whole time because I know you, and I'm going, is that Laura and her significant other? And, have you had the conversations are so real. And yet I find them actually helpful because it's almost like sitting with a therapist reading the book, because it's like you see the interplay between them and how they handle things. And you're like, is that what I would have said? How would I have reacted? You've really done that masterfully. So now you've got this whole other element of great psychology within the book itself, and relationships and themes of grief and of love and of trauma, hidden trauma, and also discovering joy. And so you've got all these beautiful things going on at the same time. And the language, I love your language. As you can hear by just hearing Laura's voice right now, you speak so beautifully, so eloquently. I like to have a dictionary handy when I read your books, even though I don't want to scare anybody away, because it's not like that. Your use of language is so beautiful. And I wish that was in more books. I just love how you weave it in there. And I feel like I grow, my brain grows a little bit when I'm enjoying myself. Yeah.
What an enormous compliment that is. Thank you so much. That's funny that you say that. There were a couple of times where my husband was reading the second book, reading the Book of Reservations, and said, wait a minute, is this us? And it isn't. But of course, I have practice in conversations with my significant other. So dialogue has always been very important to me. It's something that I'm hyper attuned to whenever I'm watching a movie or a television show or a play. When you can, natural dialogue is something I really appreciate that you're saying that I do it well, because it's something that is really important to me. When it sounds so obviously scripted, it always takes me out of whatever it is that I'm watching.
Oh, no, it's masterful. It's so real. It's so real.
And, I read out loud. That's part of my process. Part of my editing process is reading everything out loud. So if something doesn't ring true to the way that I think the characters would say it, within reason, I edit. Of course, conversation in books, we edit out a lot of the little filler words and the back and forth, and not every thank you needs a you're welcome and this and that. But the nuts and bolts of the conversation are very important to me. Mm-hmm. And having distinctive voices for each of the characters as well is important.
Oh, yes. I have them all in my mind, what they look like. And it's incredible.
I love that.
They're so rich. And so the second book, as I mentioned, the Book of Reservations, which is the second in the Ghost Table trilogy. So I just, for anybody who has always thought they might want to write a book or whatever, how do you go about writing sequels? And what do you call the third one? A trequel?
Sequel to the sequel. I've been the third in the trilogy.
The third, and there you go.
Word. We can
there
go with trequel if you want.
Yes, trequel. But how do you do that? How do you make? Yeah. Tell us. Sorry, go ahead.
It was No, please. It was an interesting process. I wrote The Coat Check Girl with planning on it being a standalone book. So fortunately, I did leave the very end slightly open-ended, enough that there was something that I could pull forward. And of course, not all of the questions were answered, which is, I love books where not all of the questions necessarily get answered. The big ones have to be. But so when I got this contract from my fabulous publisher, Ronan Weatherford, to write this as a trilogy, I was very much beholden to what I'd written in book one, as I'm learning now with writing book three, very beholden to what is in the Book of Reservations. I wanted to show characters changing and growing by the second book, but they also really needed to still authentically seem like themselves, because as much as we change and grow, our core of who we are remains intact generally. So that was a challenge, but was interesting. And I guess in some ways, because I had spent so much time with the Coat Check Girl and so much time with those characters and the restaurant, it was so familiar to me that it wasn't so hard to imagine these characters now a year later in different circumstances, but still themselves, still living in New York City, still in this restaurant that they now own in the West Village, same space. I think, excuse me, I think it also helps that it's an actual physical place that I've been. And there's what was so interesting was figuring out there's a line between wanting the Book of Reservations to be a book that anybody can just pick up and read without the backstory of the Coat Check Girl, but also I want it to appeal to people who've read the Coat Check Girl. So you want to remind your reader of certain elements without being repetitive. You want to, there's just enough to jog the memory, but without hitting them over the head with something that they just read if they read them in quick succession. You don't want to confuse new readers. But you want to get them up to speed. So it's a really interesting challenge, and one that I appreciated having.
I was so pleasantly and happily amazed by how exactly what you're saying is true. So you read The Coat Check Girl and and you think, okay, well, if there's a second one coming, what's it going to be like? But you pick up the Book of Reservations, and honestly, if you had not heard of the Coat Check Girl, it would not matter at all. But that
Thank you.
makes it all the more rich. But you really can pick up the Book of Reservations, the second one, and it's just in and of itself just fabulous. And so I can only imagine that's what you have to come up with a third one. And is that pressure? Is it like when the Beatles used to be told by their label that they had to have like this next album out by this date, or what kind of pressure is that?
Well, yes, I get compared to the Beatles quite often. It's, the pressure is, it's interesting because I very much appreciate the pressure. I very much appreciate knowing what it is that I'm supposed to be writing. And I appreciate that Ronan Weatherford wanted three books in this world. And at the same time, yes, it is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to finish out a trilogy, and you have to finish strong, or you certainly want to finish strong. And again, it's the pressure of, okay, it's sequel, so I have to pull and I have to remind, and it has to function as a standalone. It's even harder. It's even more challenging, I think, in the third one to know. I mean, I'm because there are things from book one that I need to remind the reader of, and certainly things from book two. I am having a challenging time with this one, but then I have to remind myself that I had a challenging time with the other two as well. And then something happens, and some sort of alchemy, and suddenly you have a story to edit and edit again and edit again. It's advice that I always give to other writers in my life is you just have to get that first draft out and not worry about it being pretty. You just have to get it out so that you have something to shape. And so, I love writing advice from famous writers, and so many famous writers have advice about that very matter, just getting that first draft out as quickly as you can so that you don't miss out on any of the lifeblood of it. But yeah, it is pressure. I want it to be wonderful. I want it to feel true to the first two books in the trilogy. I want it to stand alone. I want it to make sense to people who have read the first two. So it has a pretty big job to do. It has a lot of roles to fulfill.
It does, certainly. And when you're asked by a publisher to write a third one, I think that might be a little gas in the tank right there, just knowing that you have a professional who's actually telling you, yeah, we need a third one because it's really good. And so it is. My guest is Laura Buchwald. She has written the first two in the trilogy, the Ghost Table trilogy, the first one being The Coat Check Girl, and the one that I'm reading right now, The Book of Reservations, which is just good reading for any time because right now it's frozen over in northern Indiana. And this book is just warming it up for me. It's so, so good. The Book of Reservations, the third one coming soon. So I wanted to ask you this. Any chance that these are being shopped for some kind of episodic?
Being shopped, yes. It's hard to get content made these days. And Hollywood is certainly in its own kind of upheaval, as is the publishing industry, as are so many areas. But I do have some, it's in excellent hands that are, that want to see it made into something. I think an episodic would work really well. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, but, and a lot of people who've read them have said they can picture them. And because it's so dialogue heavy, I think they would lend themselves well as well. But yes, so it's being shopped, and the future is certainly unknown there, but we can hope.
Laura Buchwald, at the very beginning of the Book of Reservations, you have just your little 1 or 2 line quote that you wrote yourself, talking about who you wrote the book for.
So I dedicate this book to my father, who passed away in July of 2024. He got to know that The Coat Check Girl was being published. He got to see the cover. He got to know that I finished a draft of the Book of Reservations. And I joke in that dedication because when he read a manuscript version of The Coat Check Girl, when he finished it, he told me he loved it. And I said, I am so relieved. And he said, not as relieved as I am. which, was just the perfect
Bravo.
my dad quote.
Yes.
And I get it. I can't imagine the pressure of, reading your daughter's work and what if you can't stand it or whatever. So I make a joke about that in my heartfelt dedication to him. And, he is with me always. And it's been helpful having these books that really process grief, to kind of help me through this time.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And it moved me. So I actually got tears in my eyes and I read it over and over again because it really moved me and it touched me. And your father, who was a name for himself, probably one of the biggest agents in the entire world. I can only imagine how happy he was to see how beautiful these books were. And I have no doubt in my mind that he's also watching over you and helping to maybe, pull some strings still. Once an agent, always an agent.
Exactly. He's negotiating from beyond.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, You are a gem. And I want everybody, if you want the most fabulous book to curl up with, 2 books now. Okay. The Coat Check Girl. And then now the Book of Reservations, both by Laura Buchwald. Get them quick. You are going to love them. And you're going to be waiting for this third one like I am as well. And yes, we'll certainly wait. Not very long, I don't think, before we're seeing it on the big screen. So Laura Buchwald, per usual, thank you for gracing the airwaves with your beautiful voice, your beautiful words, your talent. It's wonderful and it's very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for listening to The Way Home. Each and every one of you are a part of The Way Home family, and we just wish for nothing but great happiness and safety and good health and prosperity, success, everything that you can possibly have to make your life a good one. And we'll see you next time on The Way Home. I'm Laura Smith.
Podcasts by Federated Media.